In today's video, we're discussing all the latest trade rumors heading into the trade deadline. We'll have an increased talk around Trevor Zegras and his future with the Anaheim Ducks. A lot of Montreal media discussing whether or not he'd be a good fit in Montreal. We'll discuss that possibility. Could Noah Hanifin also have another team after him? There's certainly lots of interest, but count the Tampa Bay Lightning as one of the teams that are likely going to be showing interest here if they haven't already. And could the New Jersey Devils, who's been trying to work out a trade with Calgary around goalie Jacob Markstrom, turn their attention to another all-star goaltender in the Western Conference? Plus, we have an update on the Morgan Rielly suspension appeal, more news from the waiver wire, and lots of other roster moves, including a signing in Detroit. All that and more coming up next. Welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to cover here today. Let's start with the news of Morgan Rielly and his suspension, who was appealed through the NHLPA to Commissioner Gary Bettman. A lot of people, including a lot of reporters, thought we were going to get news on this yesterday and what he was going to rule. It did not come until late morning here today. I'm guessing probably because yesterday was a holiday. I know he had, I believe it was 72 hours, but maybe there's a clause in there saying that holidays don't count. I'm not really sure. Either way, we got the news here now, and the suspension has been upheld. Surprisingly, it was an 11-page document that Bettman had issued on this appeal. Meanwhile, when Shane Pinto got a 41-game suspension, we got like a couple of paragraphs. It's crazy how much effort went into this appeal compared to the Shane Pinto situation, just to kind of show you a little bit of context there. And it's just a weird scenario in my opinion. But Gary Bettman did make a couple of key points. One, he said that the Ridley Gregg slap shot, in his opinion, was completely irrelevant. That Morgan Rielly had plenty of time to change his mind, approach Greg in a completely different manner, other than a cross-check. Whether or not he intended to get him in the head or not is not really the point. It obviously plays a role here, but he did acknowledge the fact that it does, kind of hit him in the arm first and ride up, but it's not the point. It's a revenge tactic. He wasn't just, challenging him to a fight. He wasn't just shoving him. It wasn't anything minor. Either it was pretty severe contact. Thankfully for Greg, in his case, he was not injured, or it could have been worse. He also made a point that because of Morgan Rielly having a long career at this point with no other incidents with player safety, no other suspensions or fines, that's the reason why they were what he kind of referred to as being more lenient on him, that it wasn't more than 5. So if this would have been a player that would have had a little bit of history, then it would have been much worse. So clearly, no changes made based on how Bettman felt about the situation here. So he also did, the other thing I found interesting on the remarks of this long document was that Morgan Rielly did admit during the hearing that his reaction was inappropriate, even though head coach Sheldon Keefe and several other teammates and other players, former players, and there's been a lot of people on both sides of the story. Even though a lot of them felt it was an appropriate reaction, he himself admitted that it was not appropriate and he went too far. So he also, has a clean history. He had lots of people with him from the Maple Leafs and the PA to argue his case, but Gary Bettman obviously wasn't having it. So Morgan Rielly's suspension stays at 5 games. He'll be eligible to return later this week when the Toronto Maple Leafs do battle with the Vegas Golden Knights. So far in Rielly's absence, they have not lost. They've been undefeated. I don't think they're too concerned here as a team. In the next game that he'll miss, so his final one will be against the Coyotes, who have had a really rough stretch of action over their last 10-12 games. So theoretically, that should be a very much winnable game for the Leafs. More news from the NHL waiver wire today. 2 players on waivers, including Zach Stanford of the Chicago Blackhawks and Jacob McDonald of the San Jose Sharks. I'm not really sure there's going to be a lot of interest in either of these players. They'll both be on it for 24 hours. We'll find out at 2 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow if there's a claim or if they can be reassigned to their team's American Hockey League affiliate. Some other news and notes from around the league. The Blues made some roster moves here today, moving defenseman Justin Falk to long-term injured reserve. They've also placed defenseman Scott Perunovich just on regular injured reserve, and Boldu has been called up in their absence here. The Hartford Wolfpack, who's the American Hockey League affiliate for the New York Rangers. Did have longtime veteran Artem Anisimov on a professional tryout, or I guess an amateur tryout is likely what it would have been referred to on a tryout basis, and he has been released, so he's not going to be signed and get a contract for the rest of the season. So clearly Anisimov still has a desire to play, but hasn't been able to catch on a full-time basis. The Dallas Stars today recalled top prospect Logan Stankoven as well, and he is expected to play tonight, so be curious to see how that works out. I know he's one of the top players and top scorer in the American Hockey League, so anxious to see what he can do at the NHL level. The Boston Bruins made a few moves today as well, recalling Mason Lohrei, and they had to place center Matt Poitras on long-term injured reserve to make the necessary space. In Vancouver as well, Archie Baines, who's already recalled the other day, is expected to play. The first game he was recalled for, he was the extra forward, was not in the lineup, but he is expected to make his NHL debut this evening. Coach Rick Tocchet said he wanted to get him in the lineup, so I'll be real curious to see how he makes out. He's a real good story for the local team there. And in Vegas, they did confirm Shea Theodore is back. He's ready to return and ready to rock, so that's good news for Vegas. A big part of their back end, which will obviously, be a huge welcome addition on that blue line. Detroit today announced that they've extended forward Michael Rasmussen to a 4-year contract extension at $3.2 million per season. Last year, he had a career high of 29 points in 56 games. He averages about 16 minutes a night. Looks like his point production this year is on similar path. I'm not sure. I mean, Red Wings fans, I'd love to know what your thoughts on this contract are. Rasmussen is, a former high pick, a big body. Certainly has worked really hard, put his time in the minors, and carved out a role here with the Red Wings. I kind of wonder though, for the kind of role that he plays, if that might be a little bit too much of an overpay. But at the same time, if they feel he's going to continue to grow and expect more out of him down the road, then maybe they'll feel that with the cap rising and with what he's hopefully going to continue to become here in the next couple of years, that it'll be fine. But I know just when my first gut instinct was like maybe a little bit rich, but at the same time, they don't have a lot of big contracts there in Detroit, so they can't afford to play some of their guys that not necessarily their top scorers a little bit more, but they have a lot of contracts in that $5-6 million range. So obviously Rasmussen falls a little bit lower in the pecking order, but just seems a little much to me. But let me know. Red Wings fans will be able to, I'm sure, have a more accurate opinion on that. I'd love to see what everybody thinks. In the trade rumor section of the video, we are going to talk about Trevor Zegras here in just a second. But first, we know Noah Hanifin is probably the hottest commodity heading into the deadline. The Calgary defenseman has had a ton of interest, and we know for sure, according to Elliot Friedman, that he's not going to re-sign with the Flames and will be heading to market, will be traded, and may or may not sign an extension with the new team. He may wait until the summer. That's not quite clear just yet, but you can count the Tampa Bay Lightning being another team added to the list of interested teams here. We already have heard before from a few other teams that are of interest. We heard the Devils, we've heard the Bruins, we've heard the Leafs, we heard the Red Wings at one point, Avalanche. There's lots of interest out there. But I think it's fair to say, based on what we know about the Hanifin situations, he would prefer to play in the United States. We know he's from the Boston area. It would be a homecoming. We know the Bruins have had interest in this player really ever since he's been drafted. So I do think they'll push hard, and I'm not surprised to hear the Lightning being another team in on it. The Panthers, of course, in the state of Florida, another team to watch. I think there's a pretty good chance Hanifin lands in the Atlantic Division between the Bruins, Panthers, and Lightning. The only problem in Tampa, I mean, I understand because with Sergachev being out, I know I watched the Lightning play the Senators last night, they lost to the Panthers the game before that pretty bad. They could certainly use some help on the blue line. There's no doubt. He would be a tremendous fit there, especially in the absence of Sergachev. I'm not sure long-term how, from a cap perspective, it could work. I mean, maybe they could squeeze him in. They don't have a lot of space, and it's really Stamkos is the main player that needs a contract beyond this year, which we know Julian Breezeball made it clear they're going to wait until the end of the season to tackle that one. But what would the Tampa Bay Lightning offer the Flames? They have given up so much in the last 3 to 4 years when it comes to going forward at the deadline. They've got a couple of Stanley Cups out of it, so I don't think they're too upset about it. But they've given up a lot of prospects. They've given up a lot of draft capital. As much as the interest is there, the fit would be good. I just don't know that they're going to really be able to give the Flames an offer that would be stronger than some of the other teams. Like we heard rumors about, the Panthers maybe offering a player like an Anton Lundell, or the Bruins have a little bit more to offer even in the Lightning too, and the Devils have lots of young players. They're another team to watch here. So honestly, I'm not sure they're going to get it done. I'm not surprised one least a little bit here to hear that they do have interest. And speaking of the Devils, we know they've had a lot of conversations with the Flames on Hanifin's teammate Jacob Markstrom, and there was close to a deal, but it didn't quite get over the line here, and end up getting rejected, you could say, by one party or maybe both sides. At the end of the day, the Devils wanted salary retention. The Flames could not make that happen. It's believed Jacob Markstrom waived his no-trade clause, and it was not part of the issue here. And that the package going back to Calgary was okay with Craig Conroy. I think the main obstacle was the retention. Even though those talks do continue, there's some buzz now around the NHL saying that, the Devils are probably still having some conversations, seeing they can figure that out. But don't be surprised if things really pick up around goalie UC Saros in Nashville. The Predators are still a bubble team. Maybe they get into the playoffs as a wild card team. But really, when you examine that situation and look at everything, there's no reason why they should not consider this. I mean, Saros has another year in his contract. They have Askarov in the minors, who's really ready to roll and be an NHL goalie. If they don't move Saros and they sign him to another long-term deal, I would imagine Askarov is likely going to ask for a trade. At least that would be my gut feeling on that one. The team obviously is in a retooling kind of mode right now. Does it make sense to sign a goalie who's not far off from 30 to a long-term deal, given the stage they're at with their team? I don't think it does. He's a great goalie. He's an all-star goalie. One of the better goalies in the league for sure. I understand why Barry Trotz would want to hang on to him, but I just think it makes too much sense to get a good haul in return to move him. I mean, you're looking at probably a couple of good young players coming from New Jersey if they can make this happen. So, in all honesty, don't be surprised one bit if the Devils move off of Markstrom and really push here for UC Saros if they can make it happen. You're looking at guys like Alexander Holtz. I don't know if they'd go down the road of a Dawson Mercer. I think they really like Mercer, but going to be a player they ask about. Simon Nemec, I don't think he's a player the Devils have any interest in moving. I know they'll be asked about him, though, for sure. And of course, they have some young goalies, too, that they could even include. I mean, Vanacek likely would have to go to make the money work. So you still got Nico Dawes in the mix with Schmid, too. Like, they'd have a wealth of some goalies that could work with Saros there. So we'll see, but I'd be curious to see how the Devils respond if they can't get a deal with the Flames. Saros might be the better option anyways, to be honest. He's a little bit younger. He comes with less term, so they can work out the next contract on their own. And just you can have him for a longer period of time given his age. So I think it's a better choice, but we'll see where that goes. And lots more talk about Trevor Zegras to Montreal. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and it continues to make its rounds and get a lot of attention. I know I've seen another Montreal media person, Eric Engels of Sportsnet, talking about this on a local podcast with another Montreal media member here, Tony Marinaro, recently. And obviously it sounds like a lot of people feel that Trevor Zegras would be a great fit in Montreal. We know last year's contract negotiation with Pat Verbeek and the Ducks was quite contentious. They were late getting a deal done, and it just sounds like as much as Trevor Zegras is a highly skilled player, I don't know that the team and the organization, like Verbeek, absolutely loves the style of play that he brings. And I would not be surprised if they were able to figure out a way to move Zegras and bring in some other young talent in a trade. That would not surprise me one little bit. Obviously, they traded his best friend, Jamie Drysdale, so clearly I don't know that he would be all that upset about moving on. Engel's opinion is that he would thrive really well in a big market like Montreal. Clearly, there's a connection to one of his great friends in Cole Caulfield, so there would be somebody he'd know real well on the team, so there's that too. Not to say that he's going to want to be traded just to be with a friend, but at the same time, having some buddies around does make a difference. And Zegras is a very, very talented player, but like I said, I wonder if someone in the Ducks organization would like to see less of the fancy stuff and just have a different style. Now, Engels' opinion, he said that Trevor Zegras has more skill in his pinky than most anybody else on the team in Montreal already. So he would come in and automatically be their top skilled player. I mean, you can say what you want about Caulfield and Suzuki. They have some good players there, and they have some more young talent coming up through the ranks. But Zegras would be a good fit. I really do think he would be. So, I mean, obviously Montreal has a lot of picks and a lot of prospects. They can't keep them all in Montreal. They have a lot of good young defensemen. There's certainly some interesting young forwards in the mix. I would not be one bit surprised if it doesn't happen by the deadline, that this trade is revisited in the summer, and I would not be shocked if Ken Hughes and the Canadiens pull off a swap here with the Ducks to bring Trevor Zegras to Montreal and reunite him with Cole Caulfield. I mean, it just seems to be gaining steam. Every time you turn around, it's becoming another topic of conversation, and we'll see where it goes. The Ducks don't have to rush into that whatsoever. Zegras is currently injured. He's only going to be coming back from injury right around the trade deadline. Not that matters too much, but he's under contract. They're neither team that we're talking about here is necessarily heading towards the playoffs. They can take their time and do this in the offseason if they really want to. Maybe it happens now, but I think it's more likely for later. So let me know what you think. Is Trevor Zegras destined for Montreal, or is he going to maybe end up somewhere else, or does he stay in Anaheim? Let me know your thoughts on that down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.